I just didn't realize that people had that much attachment to one corporate name over the other. Then I realized, though, this has basically been known as the Air Canada Centre since it's been built, right? It's not like it was the Maple Leaf Gardens and then became the Air Canada Centre. Anyhow, $800 million for naming rights of the, I guess we still have to call it the Air Canada Centre. $800 million. It's one of the heftiest naming rights agreements or naming rights fees paid. And I guess the question now is, what does MLSE do with it? So we're going to ask David Hopkinson. He's Chief Commercial Officer of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. David, thanks for joining us. Congratulations, I guess, on $800 million. My first reaction, the first thing I wanted to ask you, very basic question. Okay, you're getting $800 million for naming rights spaced over 20 years. Where does the money go?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, half of it, right off the top, is going to end up in the pockets of the players.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. That's the deal we have with both the NHL and the NBA. So all those revenues that come into the organization are either going to be allocated to, HRR, or what we call hockey-related revenue, or BRI, basketball-related income. And, a big piece of that will end up in payroll.
This is a lot of money, obviously. When you approach these things, or when MLSE approaches these negotiations, how much of what you do is based on naming rights in other facilities, or in the case of a city the size of Toronto, or in the case of a building the size of the Air Canada Centre, is there kind of a uniqueness, something related to size that enters into the equation?
There is. I mean, actually, I think that's a really astute question. Toronto's a special place, and Toronto, not only we've seen Toronto grow around us, even in the 20 years since we've opened Air Canada Centre. I mean, Toronto, as you know, now one of the largest cities in North America. Not as big as LA or not as big as New York, but bigger than every other U.S. city.
Mm-hmm.
A city that continues to grow very rapidly, and it's the economic and cultural engine for Canada. So I think that our arena has a unique place in Toronto. And as we thought about how to go to the marketplace, what the appropriate valuation we would be, the unique characteristics of Toronto, plus the Maple Leafs, plus the Raptors, plus the trajectory the city and the country's on, made us think that we had a unique opportunity here to do something world-beating.
Now, one of the interesting things from my point of view as well is, MLSE you do have a lot of corporate partnerships. You do have a lot of sponsorships with different organizations. For example, I don't know, there's a BMO logo on the floor, for example, near the Raptors bench. There's some other things like that. How do you, as the chief commercial officer, sort of make sure that all these folks are happy? It's got to be a little bit of a balancing act, at least.
Yeah, I think it is. Our philosophy at MLSE is that we're going to really concentrate on a smaller roster of partners than many of our peer franchises around the NHL or the NBA. And we're going to concentrate on having bigger partnerships, quite frankly. So, if you look at the relative ranking of the size of our partnerships, both the NHL and the Leafs in the NHL and the Raptors in the NBA would each lead those respective leagues in average size of deal. So this fewer and bigger partnership model has worked for us, and the announcement we made yesterday around Scotiabank Arena, it's really consistent with that philosophy.
Is it possible to quantify how much I'm not going to say rebirth of the Leafs, but how much the reemergence, I guess, of the Leafs, or the renaissance that we're seeing the Leafs on ice? Can you quantify whether or how much value that adds to naming rights, or is it about the building? It's
both. It's really hard to quantify. I don't think I could quantify it, say it's worth X dollars or Y dollars. But every deal, every negotiation takes place in an environment and in a context. And the enthusiasm around the Maple Leafs right now is really, really helpful for maximizing the value of this deal and the value of the rest of our franchises. Yeah, the buzz on the Leafs is great. The tremendous leadership that we're seeing under Brendan Shanahan and Lou Lamoriello, Mike Babcock, the talent, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Nylander, others. Yeah, that sure as hell helped.
One of the other things that really interest me about this is, look, Air Canada is a pretty big. They're a pretty big corporation. I presume they've been pretty big partners. Now, I mean, Scotiabank, is paying for the naming rights. But how do you ensure that you retain a good relationship with Air Canada Centre? And let's leave Air Canada aside. Let's just make it a little more generic. When you have an arena that's named, that one corporation has paid naming rights for, that contract expires. You have another corporation arrive for naming rights. I mean, I've got to think you don't want to throw the previous tenant or the previous naming rights person. You don't want to get rid of them. You still want to have some sort of relationship with them, I would think. How do you go about ensuring that relationship is okay?
Oh, yeah. It's a great question. A lot of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And, our first course here was to do the right renewal deal and stay Air Canada Centre. What I think Air Canada would tell you is over the last 20 years, their business has changed dramatically. Their marketplace has changed dramatically. And, they felt it was the right time to step aside as naming rights partner. But one of the things we did announce yesterday was that Air Canada has renewed their agreement with us for at least another 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to continue to fly the team. They're going to be a platinum sponsor, which is our top tier partner below an naming rights partner. And so Air Canada has been a fantastic partner for us for 20 years. It's going to be a great partner for us for no less than the next 8. They're in a good place. This was a business decision for them and one that they made.